Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be talking about the strengths of certain killer add-ons. And we are going to be doing this in an episodic series. And I want to start off with our top row, which is going to be our Trapper, our Wraith, our Billy, and our Nurse. Now when I talk a lot about ranking killers, I have to talk about their power specifically. Well, the add-ons are what change and make the add-ons strong. The add-ons make your power stronger. Sorry. The reason why I don't talk too much about certain add-ons is because most characters' stronger add-ons are going to be your higher rarity. That would be your ebonies and your purples, and sometimes your greens. But it's important to talk about all of the add-ons, what they do, what you should prioritize. And we'll have one for survivor items as well. But just breaking down individual killers, we're going to try and cover 4 or 5 killers per video, keep the videos smaller rather than one big long one. So we're going to start on Mr. Trapper here. His power is the bear traps, where they lay down. So for your brown add-ons, what you have is the Trapper Sack, which allows you to start with an extra bear trap, and allows the transportation of an extra bear trap, so you can carry 2 at once. Trapper Gloves slightly increase the setting speed. The Spring Coil increases the sabotage and disarm time. And the Padded Jaws do not inflict damage to trap survivors, but you get more bonus points. Of all of these traps, Trapper add-ons in the brown category, there's only 2 I recommend, and that would be the Trapper Sack and the Trapper Gloves. The Trapper Gloves is a convenience pickup. If you... It's not a great one at brown. You're better off getting some of the higher up ones if you want the convenience, but it is good. The Trapper Sack is great. Of all your browns, that's what you should prioritize. I would not recommend the Strong Coil Spring. Increasing the amount of time is nice, but it's really only effective in close range. Like, they're trying to do it in your face. And the Padded Jaws are bad, unless you're running like a Blood Point build. For yellow, we have the Trapper Bag. So you start with an extra bear trap. And what that means, by the way, is that you're bringing an extra bear trap into the game with you. That's an important thing. So you start with 1 extra bear trap, and you can transport 2 extras, which means you can have 3 at one time. Now that is a very effective thing, because it means when you're going around the environment, if you're picking up traps, you can carry them with you as you go. Which is a very important change that he needs to have. The trap setters increase the setting speed. What this means is that they get set down faster. This is comparable to the Spring Kit, which increases the sabotage and the disarm time. You are much better off with the setting speed from the trap setters than you are from the disarms. You have the bear traps, the Serrated Jaws, where they suffer from the hemorrhage effect until healed. Not a big deal on that one. And the Logwood Dye to darken the traps. Again, not a big deal. I would not recommend these 2. I would prefer that you go for the Trapper Bag and the Trap Setters as your 1-2, and then the Spring Coils, and then the Dye and the Jaws. For your green ones, this is where we start to get good. Because other than the Trapper Bag, none of these are really like must-have. They're more conveniences. Now we start to get good. So, the Mangled effect with the Rusted Jaws, that's an important add-on because it adds a little bit of Sloppy Butcher into you. You have the Secondary Coil to considerably increase the sabotage and the disarm. That's not really, again, that's not really that strong. It's not that big of a difference from the 4 Coil, so I wouldn't recommend that. The Tar Bottle considerably darkens all the bear traps. Again, not a big deal. The big thing is your setting tools and the wax brick. These are 2 critical ones. So the setting tools, not only does this increase your setting speed, so it's like, bam, but it also increases the recovery and escape time from the bear traps. So it makes it much more difficult for survivors to get out. Another good one is the wax brick. This is what I call the poor man's OP build, and this considerably reduces the chance, I'm saying considerably, even though it's moderately, just go with it. It reduces the chances of you getting out of the bear trap. So this is a very good 1-2 combo you can run. And this is where you want to start getting your good add-ons. So obviously setting tools, Rusted Jaws, Wax Brick. what you want to focus on. For purple, the oily coil to tremendously increase. That is not worth it compared to the rest of these. You have the fastening tools, which tremendously increase the setting speed, considerably increases the time to get out, and reduces the chances of the bear trap. So this actually combines the setting tool and the wax brick into one. The difference with the fastening tools is it's a purple add-on that's kind of hard to get. You also have the stitch bag, which starts you with 2 extra bear traps. So you're bringing an additional 2 traps into the trial, and you get to carry up to 3 traps at a time. This is another powerful one. And the honing stone, where people who free themselves from the traps die. They're put in the dying state if they free themselves. You have the iridescent stone for an ebony. This is a more common one. And it's a convenience, but it's not that great. So every 30 seconds, 1 bear trap at random that is closed opens up. And the other one is the bloody coil. So this increases the sabotage and disarm times by a little bit. And it also makes it so that healthy survivors that sabotage and disarm traps become injured. With the trapper add-ons, it's important to note how you manage this. Now, obviously, you want to prioritize certain things. So, for example, a stitch bag is more valuable than an iridescent stone, believe it or not. A bloody coil is more valuable than an oily coil. So that's a trade-off where one is superior to the other, but sometimes it's not always the other way around. Wax bricks are generally things you can get that are very cheap. So, you have to look at things in the blood web. If you want to look at like 3,000 and 4,000 stuff, your yellows in that, you know, trap setters and trapper bags. Same thing. Trapper sack, trapper gloves. These are your priorities on the lower tier side, but if it's like, okay, a secondary coil versus a strong coil, just go for the strong coil because it's cheaper than the actual green one, which is as strong. The next killer we're going to look at is the Wraith. And the Wraith is a killer who can actually get a lot of value out of low tier stuff. So what we have is the Serpent. So the Wraith uncloaks completely when breaking pallets and gens, wall cloaked. We have the Hound, where blood trails are more discernible. So this is basically Bloodhound. The Ghost, after uncloaking, the terror radius and the red stain remain suppressed for 6 seconds. And the Beast, where the terror radius is no longer suppressed while cloak, and you get a bonus 100% in blood points for surprise attacks. All of these add-ons are actually surprisingly good. Getting the Bloodhound one, where it's basically Bloodhound for free as an add-on, means you don't have to run it in a build. So if you're running Bloodhound with Sloppy Butcher, you can take the Bloodhound out for something else and replace it with the Soot add-on here. This one where you uncloak completely when breaking a pallet, this means that if a survivor tries to throw down a pallet in the middle of a chase, it stacks very well. Because it's like you can uncloak, and if they're camping waiting for you to come out of the bell, you can hit them immediately. The Ghost is probably one of his top 3 most powerful add-ons. Because it is his ultimate stealth build. It enables you to mind game the survivor after you uncloak. Most people are like, okay, they hear the bell, they're thinking, okay, the terror he must be on the other side of the map then, if I'm not hearing the terror rays, when in fact he's right in front of you. Even this one is an odd one, where the terror radius is no longer suppressed, because you can actually mind game around that wall cloaked. Most people aren't going to figure out what's going on until you actually play around it. But all 4 of these are actually very solid. For the yellow ones, the Bone Clapper is fantastic. So this means that survivors can no longer determine where the bell is coming from. It makes it so that the bell no longer has a discernible direction or distance. So you can be far away. It sounds the same as if you're right close to them. Solid add-on for good mind games. This is where we get into some of the weirder ones, because you have to be careful about what you choose here. So you have Windstorm Mud. So this increases movement speed while cloaked, decreases movement speed while uncloaking. It's not great, but it's a nice bonus. Swift Hunt reduces the reappearance time, means you come out of the bell quicker. Considerably reduces the disappearance time. This means you go into the bell quicker. And then you have Blind Warrior. This is the best one. So surprise attacks inflict blindness, aura blindness for 60 seconds. That is strong if you want to play as sort of a third seal type killer. The downside to the yellow add-ons is they're not particularly powerful other than Bone Clapper and Blind Warrior. Going to your green ones, Windstorm White. So this increases movement speed while cloaked, decreases while coming out. This is a significant improvement over the yellow version. So that is the preferred one because it's a considerable increase with only a slight decrease. This is a moderate increase with only a slight decrease. Moderately reduces the reappearance time. This makes it come out of the bell faster. Tremendously reduces the disappearance. This makes it quicker to go into the bell. This one, the Blind Warrior, this is Mangled and Hemorrhage, so this is Sloppy Butcher on surprise attacks. But I don't recommend this one because of the fact that the brown one, where it's discernible, is better. And the yellow one for the aura blindness is better. Yes, it is basically running Sloppy Butcher in a perk, but in a perk slot, in an add-on slot, I wouldn't recommend it. In all honesty, I would not recommend running the add-on here because you're better off just running Sloppy Butcher. It's better to have a perk if you're trying to buy in Bloodwebs, as an example as well. It's better to buy the perk for 5,000 than it is to buy a one-time add-on for 5,000. The one that I skipped was Shadow Dance, and this is incredibly strong. This reduces the time it takes to vault, open lockers, and break pallets and gens while cloaked, and it's a significant increase. This is basically adding Iron Maiden, Brutal Strength, and Bamboozle into an add-on. It's very strong, and it's one of his better add-ons, but it doesn't pair well with builds where you don't want to be in cloak as often. For your purple add-ons, we have Windstorm Blood, so tremendous increased movement speed, slightly decreases the uncloak speed. The problem that I have with all of these add-ons, realistically, is that, yes, you move very fast while you're uncloaking, so you can quickly catch up to survivors, but you move very slow while uncloaking, which means the survivor's gaining more distance on you. And the burst of speed you get coming out of cloak is not necessarily strong enough to maybe catch up to that. So unless you're a race who is going to be cloak, find a survivor, hit them, cloak again, and then hit them when you get to a close enough range. If you're going to be one of those types of, and not actually, if you're playing on chasing with the cloak off, don't do it. Swift Hunt reduces the reappearance time. Again, this is just, you come out of the bell faster. It's a solid one. Shadow Dance Blood, this is tremendously reduces the time, so this is just like, imagine tier 3 of all of those. All-Seeing Eye, this is strong, but it's not the best thing in the world. It takes a lot of practice to understand how this works. So what it means is while you're... Oh my god, yes?
Well, it kind of depends on the Wraith thing I was talking about, that you were talking about. That most Wraiths usually just stay in stealth and figure out how to sneak up on those people. But what if you're a very aggressive Wraith that doesn't need stealth? What do you need to run?
Well, that's the thing. I'm just going over, like, what you should prioritize in Bloodwebs and stuff like that if you're trying to, like, get add-ons and stuff. What add-ons are better for certain situations. If you don't rely on stealth as much as the Wraith, to be honest, you're better off just running the brown add-on where you get more blood points, but the terror radius isn't suppressed. There's a difference between stealth and managing your cloak. So, if you mean stealth as, oh, I don't ever go into the cloak. I cloak once every now and then to get survivors. And then I just chase them down the rest of the time as an M1 killer. Most of the Wraith add-ons are not going to be for you. You're not going to get a lot of value out of his add-ons if you're not cloaking. So you're better off just getting cheap add-ons to put on that help certain situations that you experience a lot, rather than focusing on the cloak. For me, I like to balance it between, I will be in cloak if I'm not attacking a survivor. I have basically a switch between attack and cloak. So it's like, if I'm hunting a survivor where I know I'm not going to get a hit, I stay in cloak. When I think I'm going to go for the hit, then I uncloak. If I need to mind game, I can cancel the cloak to see if I can bait them out. It doesn't really matter. The All-Seeing Eye is basically Amanda's letter. A lot of people know that from the pig. But it's important to note that the range is very short. It's 12 meters. So you have to be right next to the survivor. The survivor will probably see you if you're moving. Unless it's around a jungle gym situation where you're like looking through the walls to see if anyone's on that gen. It can be powerful at times, but it depends on the build you're going for. For the Ebonies, he has a very strong one, the Catacomb Clapper, which makes the bell completely silent. And he has a very bad one, in my opinion, which is the All-Seeing Spirit, where, while cloaked, the repair progress of generators is determined by the intensity of their aura. Now, this add-on, in my opinion, is very overrated, and I would recommend avoiding this as much as you can, because of the fact that the Wraith does not have the mobility to get around the map. You have to pair this with the Windstorm Blood add-on to increase your movement speed while cloaked to apply it. Because if your plan is going to be, that gen's almost done, I'm going to go over there and apply, you know, pop or overcharge, or I'm just going to go ooga booga booga and try and chase them off the gen. If you see that the gen is very close to being done, by the time you get there, it will be done. Period. There's no real value to this add-on because you don't have the mobility to get there. The Catacomb Clapper is a must-have. If it comes up in a Blood Web, get it. If you like to play around stealthy Wraith, this is your way to go. The Catacomb Clapper and the Ghost is your best bet. Bone Clapper and the Ghost is a knockoff if you want to go for a decent stealth build. But primarily, I would recommend things based around using your stealth, because he is an M1 killer without it. There's not a lot you can really run. Most of the caveats is that these things activate when you're cloaked. If you like to play around in a Wraith that's not cloaked, I would recommend the reappearance time. So if you do go into cloak, you get out of it faster. And I would recommend the Beast, where you have a terror radius while you're cloaked, but you get more blood points. Because you're basically an M1 killer at that point as well. For the Hillbilly has the chainsaw, which goes across the map very quickly and activates the dying state if you hit someone with a chainsaw. The thing that's important to note is that this chainsaw is very hard to control, so most of the add-ons we're going to be talking about are based around control. Also note that the Hillbilly is one of 3 killers that does not possess an Ebony add-on. So when we talk about what to prioritize on the Hillbilly, we are going to be talking more broadly in terms of higher end add-ons being your purples, which he only has 2. Most of the add-ons you can get on the Hillbilly are actually good though. I would say the same thing for Hillbilly and Leatherface. Most of their add-ons are good, so it's not going to be a big discussion. So, vegetable oil, this slightly decreases the chainsaw's cooldown. This is the time between using your chainsaw. There is no, like, timer bar that has to fill up. This is just when you are done chainsawing, there's a delay before you revert back to normal. This reduces that. Spark plug, this decreases the chainsaw's charge time. So what this means is that you're able to get into your actual chainsaw a lot faster. Because you have to basically pulse. If you're trying to bait out a survivor and control the chainsaw at close range, you kind of have to pulse the actual power button to use the chainsaw. That way you don't automatically activate it. The charge time reduces this, so it makes it a little bit harder to chainsaw a survivor, but it makes it easier to get across the map. And that's an important trade-off that we need to talk about. What add-ons are good for map control? What add-ons are good for survivor downs? So vegetable oil is better for survivor downs. Spark plug is better for map control. The other one you have, I don't recommend these, is the chainsaw file. So this reduces the noise the chainsaw makes. I would not recommend that. One of the critical ones that you definitely want to get is spiked boots. This increases steering while using the chainsaw. It is very hard to steer the chainsaw without hours and hours and hours of practice. So the spiked boots is actually a better investment in you because it gives you a larger degree of control. You can actually make some tight corners on certain maps. And if you're on certain maps like Lurries and Meatpacking, it is a necessity. Most of the add-ons we talk about are yellow. We have the speed limiter. I don't recommend this. So the chainsaw does not trigger the dying state. So hitting a healthy survivor will injure them, and an injured survivor will down them. But you get 50% more blood points for the hit. I would not recommend this. It's very hard to get chainsaw hits at close range and long range, and if a survivor is healthy, then you're better off with the down than that. Shop lubricant decreases chainsaw cooldown. I wouldn't recommend it over vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is very common, and the cooldown is not really what you want to focus on, so primer bulb moderately decreases chainsaw's charge time. This is what you're going for if you want to go for the insta chainsaw, where it's like, oh, I can just instantly chainsaw that survivor down. This is what makes the charge time a bit more better for actually downing survivors, because it makes it pretty instant. I wouldn't say instant, but it's not like, a Leatherface where charge and release. I would say it's more of, though, a convenience add-on. Long guide bar increases the reach of the chainsaw attack. This is important if survivors are trying to juke you at the last second. You can use that additional reach if they're trying to do a close range cut and still get them with it. So this is a solid add-on if you have a problem with landing instant chainsaw hits. Homemade muffler reduces noise of the chainsaw. I don't recommend that. You have the grizzly chain. So what this means is that it decreases the repair speed of survivors hit by the chainsaw for 90 seconds. This add-on is best paired with the speed limiter, so that you're not instantly downing survivors. And it allows you to apply that repair speed realistically. One thing you have to realize with the lost survivors is if you're downing them and you're hooking them, okay, that 90 seconds starts activating as soon as they go down. So let's say it takes you 10 seconds to pick them up and hook them. That means there's 80 seconds left. Now, realistically, about 30 seconds go down before they get unhooked. And they're going to heal up probably. The amount of time that you're actually going to get out of this is very limited. And most of the time the survivor won't work on a gen, especially if you're chasing them as well. So this add-on can be good, but most of the time I wouldn't recommend it. There's another add-on that's better. That's a purple one. You have the depth gauge rake. This reduces the time penalty if you bump into an object. This is solid. It's a nice time convenience, but you're better at just learning when to cancel your chainsaw and not directly hit a survivor. And we have the death engraving. So this increases the chainsaw speed, but it also increases the charge time. This is a situation where the benefit is not as good as the penalty. Yes, you can combine it with a primer bulb, but a slight increase in movement speed for what will end up being a slight decrease in charge time is not worth it. So we go on to your add-ons. Thompson's Mix. This is incredibly important. So this increases how often you can chainsaw. This decreases the charge time. So it makes it a lot quicker to get into your chainsaw. And it increases how much you can chainsaw because you're considerably decreasing the cooldown. Not a must-have, but a nice convenience. Rusted Chain. This is a much better add-on than the Grizzly Chain. Because of the fact that you are applying a mangled effect, it means that it's slower to heal for 2 minutes. That's important because Survivor goes down, Survivor is injured, you hook the Survivor, they get off a hook, it takes them longer to heal up and get back into the game. So unless they're trying to play around an injured build where that doesn't really matter, then this is a solid slowdown mechanic. Light Chassis, this is a stronger add-on, but again, you want to focus more on... This is a vast improvement over the Death Gauge Rake, but it's not a requirement. So this reduces the time penalty when bumping into objects. Again, you're better off learning to control it. You're not going to run into objects as much on Billy as you are on Leatherface. That's why I mentioned this. You have the Doom Engravings. Now, this is a better add-on, a much superior add-on to the Death one. This moderately increases the chainsaw speed and slightly increases the charge time. Because now you compare this with the Primer Bulb for a slight decrease and a moderate increase in the movement speed. Slight decrease in the charge, moderate increase. It's a much better combination. The Carburetor Tuning Guide, a lot of people run this. It's all around good. It reduces the noise a little bit. It reduces the time penalty a little bit. It decreases the cooldown, and it decreases the charge time. It is an all-around good add-on if you are not sure what to run. This should be your priority out of all of the green items, because it just is a flat reduction in all of your penalties. Now we look at the purple one. So you have your Begrime Chain, which is... It reduces the repair speed of survivors injured by the chainsaw, and it applies the mangled effect. So this is the combination of the Rusted and the Grizzly. The disadvantage to this is that applying both is sometimes overkill, because the survivors usually are only going to be hit with one. So if they're injured, they don't want to heal up, and they're working on the gen, then they get hit with the penalty. But if they want to heal up, by the time they're done healing, usually the penalty's gone away, and they're fine working on a gen. So it's not a must-have add-on, but it is a solid addition. I just think there's better things to run on him. And the Thompson's Moonshine, which tremendously increases steering while using the chainsaw. This, with spiked boots, gives you complete control over your chainsaw. Considerably increasing the time penalty, though, means you need to be more careful. So the way this works, I love the design of the add-on. So we're giving you the ability to have pretty much full control over your chainsaw while steering it. So if you're stupid enough to hit anything, that's on you. You should not be pairing this with anything to reduce it. You shouldn't be pairing this with the Light Chassis. I see people do that all the time. The design of this add-on is based around you not hitting stuff. That penalty there is meant to punish you if you hit stuff. So the things I would definitely recommend: Thompson's Moonshine, Carburetor Tuning Guide, Doom Engravings, Long Guide Bar, Primer Bulb, and then the Spark Plug and the Vegetable Oil and the Spike Boots. That's what I would recommend for your hardcore. Nurse is a bit interesting. Almost all of Nurse's add-ons are give and take. So anything that isn't a give and take on her add-ons, you want to focus on. So, to show you what I mean, even looking at her brown add-ons, which are like beginner ones, they're cheap, they're meant for you to get an understanding of how she's meant to be played, even they have penalties. The power with the Nurse is blinking. And the thing a lot of people forget is that the Nurse is incredibly fucking slow if she's not blinking. So you need to manage your blinking properly. And that is what almost all of her add-ons do, is they help her blinking. So, to anyone that wants to say, well, I'm not planning on blinking with the Nurse, well, there's not a lot of add-ons to help you. There's like one or two. Let's start. So you have Wooden Horse. This increases the range of the blink, decreases the accuracy. Basically, you can go farther, but where you end up, you have less control over. There's a lot of these. This is solid if you're trying to increase the range. If you're focused on using it for mobility instead of lethality, and that's the thing we're going to talk about a lot, like with Billy. If you're using the blink for mobility, this is better. If you're using it to get hits, don't bother. You have the knit comb. This actually doesn't have a penalty. This increases the blink movement speed. So while you are actually teleporting, you move faster in the teleport. That's what that means. Torn bookmark. So this adds an extra chain blink, and it applies a few negatives. So it reduces the range of the blink, and it reduces how long you have to chain those blinks. But it puts you up to 3 blinks. As a brown add-on, it's pretty solid. If you can work around quickly blinking at short range, this is a good way to combo your blinks effectively. Metal spoon, this increases the charge time of the blink, so it makes it so that it charges faster. I don't recommend this add-on. It's not really something that, at least for me and my style, that works, but there are some people that think she has a slow charge time on the blink. I don't like that. I disagree. This is another one that doesn't have a penalty as well. This is the, it increases the chain window. So you can actually, like, plan out and mind game your blinks a little bit more. So this is a solid add-on. Most of these are solid add-ons. I would say the only one that I would avoid too much, I would probably avoid the metal spoon. Other than that, all of these are solid, low tier. And then you have the Batman's Keepsake, where it moderately increases the charge speed of the blink. So the actual time it takes to charge your blink and travel is a little bit faster. This is where we get to where almost everything has a trade-off. The absolute best nurse add-on in the game, in my opinion, is the Pocket Watch. What this does, for those that don't know, when you blink as the nurse, you go, ugh, and you fatigue after blinking. If you attack after blinking, that fatigue time is even longer. That's the thing a lot of people don't know when they're playing the nurse until they get to a higher level. The Pocket Watch decreases the charge time of the blink, so it makes your blinking around a little slower. But it reduces the fatigue time of the blink. And there's not a lot of add-ons that do that. This is incredibly important if you want to blink a lot. People say, well, the charge time decrease, you know, that removes it. No, this is a must-have. Another give and take is the dull bracelet. So this increases the blink movement speed, so you blink faster, but it also decreases the blink charge speed. In my opinion, it's not as good as a Pocket Watch. Get the Pocket Watch instead. But if you like quickly blinking so that survivors can't juke you, this is a solid add-on. Another give and take one, the Dark Cincher. This adds a chain blink, bringing you up to 3. And it reduces the range of the blink very slightly. So this is comparable to the Torn Bookmark, and it's actually better than the Torn Bookmark because it doesn't have the reduction in the chain blink window. So if you can get this, this is one of the better add-ons for her. Because the negative, it can be offset very, very easily, actually, by increasing the range slightly. The Catatonic Boy's Treasure. This increases the range, but decreases the accuracy. We've already talked about this. It's decent for mobility, not so much for lethality. Now we go to your green ones. So you have Spasmodic Breath. This increases the charge time, but increases the fatigue. I do not recommend this. Again, don't increase your fatigue time if you're trying to down survivors. Bad idea. If you're trying to play Bamboozle Nurse, go right the fuck ahead. But I don't like this add-on. And also because it affects the charge speed, and I'm not somebody that gives a crap about charge speed on Nurse. So, there you go. Next one is Heavy Panting. This increases the fatigue duration. This is not a good idea. It does increase the chain blink window. If you are willing to suffer the long fatigue time, I will recommend this because it does let you mind game survivors by, oh, so you think you're going to run over there? Nope, I've got enough time. I can change the direction of my blink. But again, the fatigue duration will get you killed as a nurse. Unless you can down survivors and hit them in one shot, you're not getting the benefit. Fragile Wheeze. Again, one of the best add-ons in the game. Pair this with the Pocket Watch. You have 3 blinks with a reduced fatigue time and only a slight decrease in charge speed. It's the best combination you can get without spending purple shit. You have the... I'm not even going to pronounce it. You have this add-on. It increases the range of the blink. It decreases the accuracy of the blink. Again, solid for mobility. I wouldn't recommend it for lethality because the considerable decrease in the accuracy of the blink means if there's a jungle gym right in front of you and you're like, I'm going to teleport in there, and you wind up outside of it in front of a pallet and you get stunned and fatigued, it's not nice. But if you're trying to get full across the map, it's solid for that. Anxious Gasp. So this increases the blink movement speed. So again, you're just wham, you're on top of them. But it decreases the charge time a decent amount. So it makes it harder for you to actually hit multiple ones. For your purples, we have the Plaid Flannel. This allows the nurse to see the landing area of the blink. This is not a must-have add-on. It's more of a convenience in that if you're running something where you don't have the accuracy, like if you're reducing the accuracy of your blink, seeing specifically where you're going to land is very good for judging it. We have Kavanaugh's Last Breath, which I don't recommend. This moderately increases the chain blink window, so you can chain your blinks easier. And it increases the fatigue duration, but it removes 1 blink. You do not want to be doing this. Especially if unless you're planning on stacking it with something like a Fragile Wheeze, which basically counteracts the removing of the chain blink. You still only have 2 blinks. So that moderately increase the chain blink window is not necessary for that. It's not a very strong add-on in my opinion, but it is possible to get good gameplay out of it. I did have one game where it came in handy, but that was against very low-tier survivors. Jenner's Last Breath. Okay, of all the removing penalties, this is better. Yes, it does decrease the charge speed, and it removes a chain blink, but it tremendously increases the blink speed. So it's like, when you blink, bam, you're there. You can confirm hits very quickly off of this, but you're only going to have 1 or 2 blinks to do it in. We have Campbell's Last Breath. This is great. This adds 2 blinks, but reduces the range. The range reduction is not a big deal because you have the extra blinks. So if you're going for Omega Nurse with the Campbell's Last Breath and the Fragile Wheeze, where you have like 5 blinks, that's your best bet. You can deal with the range reduction for that. Last one we have is the Badman's Last Breath. This increases the charge time a lot, so it's very quick blink, but the movement speed isn't that great. And it increases the fatigue a little bit, and it removes the blink. I don't recommend this one as well. I would avoid the Badman's Last Breath. I would avoid Kavanaugh's Last Breath. I would avoid Jenner's Last Breath. You don't want to take away your blinks, unless you're running a meme build where you can't blink. Because remember, you start with 2 blinks, and if you run a Kavanaugh's Last Breath and a Jenner's Last Breath, you're basically playing a Bamboozle Nurse, because you have no blink potential. Period. You're an M1 killer. And a slow one at that. The Plaid Flannel, it's alright. It's not a necessity. Get Campbell's Last Breath if you can. I would say get the Fragile Wheeze if you can. Other than that, like, those are the only 3 high-level add-ons I recommend on her. A good nurse player does not need a lot. You can go with the Pocket Watch, you can go with the Dark Cincher, you can go with the Dull Bracelet, you know, you can go with the Catatonics Boy Treasure, because it is cheaper than getting, you know, some of the other ones. And all the brown ones are pretty decent, so you can actually get a lot of low-tier add-ons for the nurse to be successful. So the short rundown of the 4 killers that we've covered. The Trapper is a killer that benefits more from his higher level add-ons. However, you can save yourself some time by avoiding certain add-ons that are not as valuable, such as the Spring Coils. For the Wraith, he can benefit greatly from his low-tier add-ons. The trade-off, though, is that if you are not focused around stealth, you are not going to benefit from his add-ons too much. For the Hillbilly, again, the lower tier add-ons are pretty solid. He's an all-around well-done killer add-on wise, so whatever add-ons you get are going to be successful. And we have the Nurse, where her low tier add-ons tend to be better. The higher up you go, the more expensive they get, the less value you're going to get out of them, unless you are a serious Nurse player, like a god tier Nurse that doesn't miss. And for a killer that's already hard, if you're looking for an introduction into the killers, I would recommend, out of all of these, if you have a decent selection of add-ons, I would recommend the Wraith. The Trapper requires too much help from the survivors, and the Billy and the Nurse both require a good deal of practice. So,